I've had a lot of people ask me how I choose the colours for my designs that I choose, and if there is a science to it, a way that I do it that you guys can also replicate and follow. So I thought I would make a video just to kind of show you guys how I have come to the decisions when it comes to a lot of my project colour palettes that I have done that you have seen on my social media and my patterns. I'm Jessie of Crochet by Jessie. Let's get into today's video. I never really thought that I personally had a knack for colour palettes and choosing exciting colourways and yeah, all of that kind of stuff. I never really thought that that was something that came to me naturally. However, earlier on this year, when I started to do some little teasers and reveals of the Crochet jumper, which is this jumper here, which released last week, but it will be like 2 weeks nearly by the time you guys see this, my previous thought that I wasn't good with colours was completely changed, because with the Crochet jumper, I had so many people asking for the exact breakdown of all of the colours I used, how much I used for it. And honestly, as a designer, that was not something that I had at all experienced. It was very, very new to me, but it kind of made me aware as well just how much of a problem people find it to choose colour palettes. So I thought it'd be really good to just do a video explaining how I come to my colour palettes personally, but also just giving you guys just a few hacks and tips as well for just finding easier solutions to some slightly different, more out there colour palettes. Before I started getting a lot more adventurous with my colour palettes, a lot of the projects that you typically would have seen from me was colour changing yarn, where I don't have to make the actual decision, which, to be fair, I still support colour changing yarn, because I feel like you can actually take a colour palette out of colour changing yarn and work with that, because I have done that as well myself. Typically, that was the best way that I could be adventurous with my projects, because a lot of the projects that I did, I tend to focus on, let's say, one colour, and then I would just use a bunch of different shades of that colour. I have still done that with some of my designs, such as the Tesserae top and the Kalos top. So yeah, I still use that practice every so often, but I don't rely on it as much as I used to, which is the big difference. This jumper here, for example, I am kind of staying within the same family of colours, but just going for loads of them and having ones that are a little bit more subtle and ones that are a bit more vibrant, and then some neutrals such as the cream that I've put in this as well. And I've also got some brown throughout as well. So one thing that I definitely found, which I also did with the Tesserae jumper, for example, is I'm now exploring and learning very broad, colourful projects, which previously I kind of shied away from, to be honest. So I feel like finding the perfect balance for me for projects that are both vibrant and beautiful and a bit out there, but still a lot more wearable in day-to-day life than maybe other colour combos, is I like to use the balance of having a couple neutral colours in a colour palette and then having a lot more vibrant colours as well, because I feel like they just balance each other out a little bit. So in the Tesserae jumper, a lot of my more neutrals, I've obviously got the caramel brown. I literally thought when I said that caramel wasn't a word, but it is. So the caramel brown is the most prominent colour out of the entire of the jumper. I mean, most of the skeins with all the other colours, I use one skein for the entire project and that's it for that colour. The caramel I had 3 skeins of, and it's so much more consistent. I feel like having one colour that is neutral, but also like a colour in general that kind of draws the whole piece together. For me, this colour was the oat milk, which is this lighter cream that you see in this jumper. I feel like having a consistent colour throughout kind of draws the whole piece together. So even though you might be using colours that are a little bit out there and you don't really think that they'll look good together, if you keep it cohesive, they kind of fit better than you would imagine. On top of that, I like to include vibrant colours, and I really did in the Tesserae jumper, but I just did a few that I thought were just a little bit more out there, because I feel like I kind of went to like the 3 tones of colours. I went for the basic neutrals, which I feel like for me are really good at drawing a piece together from what I have experienced so far. Then I kind of have the medium ones where it's a colour and it's not too out there or bold, and I feel like I try to choose my majority of colours for a colour palette in that section. And then I have like my really bright, vibrant ones, which I try to do a couple of, but I kind of prefer them to be like a pop of colour that you have in the overall design, so it doesn't take over, but it still stands out. But then you can wear it as much as you want because it's not like absolutely crazy. And sometimes you want a crazy piece, which is great, but just speaking from my experience of just getting used to colour palettes, I feel like that's the perfect formula, is just having a little bit from each, but focusing on like that middle section of colours, but slightly more subtle ones, because I feel like you get really good results from this. The other aspect, which I have mentioned a little bit in some of my previous videos, is I feel like when you have got an associated theme or just a very generic vibe that you want to go for, it's easier to pick a combo of colours that you wouldn't typically have chosen yourself, but they're all associated with that same vibe. So I'm going to go through a few examples of my lovely testers just to give you an idea on the vibe that I've gathered from their piece and how it's relevant and how it could work for you guys in future projects as well. So I'm going to be using examples of the Tesserae jumper. The first example here is a very beachy themed piece. You can see that it is a very calm and subtle colour palette. You've got lots of sandy tones and creams and blues, and I feel like it's a really beautiful palette. It's not crazy out of your comfort zone, but not a lot of people would put beiges and blues together. People would just put maybe blues and whites, blues by themselves, blues and greys, which is fine, obviously. But for me, I found that this was such a beautiful, subtle, but slightly more out there colour palette, and it had a very clear theme for me. The second I saw that palette, I thought that was absolutely beautiful. If you want something that's very tasteful, but not as much of an impact, then it works perfect. And in that example, the creams, in my opinion, very much are the neutral part, which really just draw the project all together. A different example, which I absolutely love, is this jumper here. The overall vibe I got was very much kind of like fire and ember and volcano, all that kind of thing. Whether it was intentional or not, it is very autumn as well, but for me, it was like just the reddy hues in it really just made me think of fire. So you've got these beautiful browns, which in my opinion is what grounds the piece, because again, I always say if you can have a neutral there that just ties it in together, I just think it gives you like a very elevated finish, and I feel like I see that here. But you've got all of these beautiful vibrant pops of colour, but again, they're not taking over it too much. So you've got the colour, but then you've got the rest of the kind of more in-between colours that I described, where they're not too vibrant, but they're still very much there. And I feel like the balance that has been done in this piece has just made it so cohesive and so impactful, but it's still a really tasteful, well-made, very professional looking piece at the same time, which is also like the polar opposite appearance to the previous beach themed top, because yeah, they couldn't be more different. A final example that just has a completely different vibe in my opinion is a colour palette, which is a huge colour palette. There are 18 colours in this jumper. It is this third Tesserae jumper here. What I love about this one is I feel like there's a bit of a crossover with vibes, I would say. For this one, it feels very dainty and kind of cottagecore, but with a few more pops of colour than you would typically see. There's a lot of neutrals in there as well. Like I really enjoy seeing some of the deeper browns. For me, having neutrals, whether they're in multiple colours or just one colour, I feel like it does draw it all together, and you will see how cohesive this piece looks despite using 18 colours. What also is really good about this piece is I feel like it's a really good example of a slightly more subtle colourway where there's not any really crazy vibrant pops of colour, but because you've got that kind of the anchoring of the neutrals and the other colours don't really feel like they're kind of fighting for attention, if you know what I mean. Again, it's really cohesive, but in a very different way. This piece, I feel like the most out of all three of them is very everyday wear, but also still being a very feature piece. I feel like it will never get lost in the outfit you're wearing it in, but it's never going to be like a really loud piece at the same time. And if that's what you're looking for having pieces of crochet in your wardrobe that is everyday wear that you can get so much use out of, that might be a really perfect route for you to follow when creating your colour palettes. I already know, for example, that another project I want to do down the line, I'm currently working on a cardigan for the first time as a design. I think I've nailed the overall structure, and so I'm already thinking and picturing about future cardies despite it not being done. That's the mind of a designer, is all I can say. I've already pictured some new colours that I want to work with, and the kind of vibe that I am already picturing, I kind of want to go from, in my head, what is a mix between fairy core and cottage core for the overall colour palette inspiration. I want to have a bunch of colours that I don't typically put together because I feel like as a designer, I want to challenge myself to do that as much as I can. So the kind of colours that I am planning to put together, I want purples, blues, pinks. They're going to vary between kind of like a medium tone to a lighter tone, not fancying any dark tones except for probably a deeper navy-ish kind of blue. That's the only kind of deeper tone I'm thinking out of those three colours. I want some greens. I'm thinking a sagey kind of green, which is like my favourite colour, if you didn't know. I'm picturing both some brown, which I am going to use a medium tone brown. The oat milk, which is the cream which you see here, is going to be a major feature in this design because I want to make some ribbing for it and I want all of that to be in the oat milk colour. I'm debating adding a pastel kind of yellow because I don't typically work with colours like that, but I feel like the overall vibe I'm going for, I think it will fit in very nicely. But equally, if your yarn arrives and you are not feeling it when it's in person, don't use it. That's fine, you're allowed to do that because I have done that in other projects and then I've had that colour in my stash and it's been perfect for a different project. So it will work out. Don't feel like you have to use colours that you've already pre-selected. Despite everything I have said, if you are still looking at me in shock and horror going, Jessie, you're making it sound so easy in your head, but it's just not translating for me, then don't worry because I have a little bit of like an in-between solution that you guys can do as well. I've had a few friends recommend this to me beforehand, and honestly, that's how some of them have found their colour palettes, which have been beautiful. And because of that, I started to look into it myself, and I can now say, yeah, they've hit a gold mine with this recommendation, and that is finding colour palette inspiration on Pinterest. Literally just typing colour palette inspo, the amount of results you get, and you can scroll through it, and again, you're getting, some colour palettes are a bit basic and you probably, even if you're not the best with colours, you'd probably still be able to put them together. But Pinterest really does show a selection of colour palettes that I personally don't think I would have ever chosen myself, but they work so nicely and it's so cohesive, and it kind of follows some of them the principle, like I said, where you've got like a bit of a neutral, a bit of vibrant, and the rest in the middle. But some of them don't have that, and I genuinely think that they still look amazing. So my rules that I kind of try to follow, they're not foolproof because you can get some amazing versions despite that where it's not remotely following that idea, like I said. But Pinterest is great. I would also say if you're trying to get a little bit out there with choosing colours yourself, maybe choose a colour palette that you absolutely like and then, well, absolutely love more like, and add a colour or two into it, or maybe take a colour out and have that as like your foundation colour palette idea and mess with it a little bit. Give it a little bit of your style and your personality, because in that case, yeah, you didn't necessarily think of the entire concept yourself. However, by the end of it, you are going to have a unique colour palette, even though maybe you've only changed a few things. That's still a colour palette you've chosen. You may not have thought of the concept from the start, but if you're going, oh, actually, I'm not really sure about this colour, but I really think that this alternative colour would look really great with it, you're already starting to get a bit more creative and working on choosing the colours and what looks good and what doesn't, while still being a bit out of your comfort zone, because really that's what you guys want to try when you're starting to do this. I for one know that I am definitely going to be looking at Pinterest for more inspiration in the future, because honestly, I didn't realise that the inspo was as amazing as it is, and that there really are some out there design kind of palettes altogether. I thought maybe it was going to be a bit more generic. Could not be more wrong. I stand correct. So yeah, I feel like even if you are a bit more experienced in colour palettes, I really recommend checking it out regardless, because I guarantee there'll be something that you probably haven't thought of. And even if you're not working on a project or a new project at the moment, it can be a really good thing just to note down to have a look at working on a project with that colour palette in the future. I really hope that colour palettes and choosing colours for projects feel a little bit less intimidating now. Honestly, with me, there really is no science to it. I can't say that I have this foolproof formula that will work every single time, but just giving you guys a tip of what tends to work for me for the most part. I feel like that's the best thing that I can do. So the main things to take away is, when I'm choosing my colours, try and choose from all three sections. I love to have a neutral, which I feel like grounds the piece. I like to have the in-between colours, which don't crazily stand out, but adds a lot of depth to the project. And if you can have a couple colours that pop out with a bit of vibrancy, then that works amazing. And then alternatively, as I also said, if you have just like a theme or a vibe or a place or a specific item that you want to be the theme of your piece, then that's another really great way to source a bunch of colours that maybe you've seen out there in the real world that you want to create and you wouldn't have otherwise thought of together. If you have gotten to this stage of the video, then let me know which tip you have personally found most beneficial and if you're going to potentially try out any of this that I have suggested in today's video. As always, thank you guys so much for watching today's video. If you're watching this part and you're not yet subscribed, please consider doing so, as well as pressing the bell to be notified when my next video is up. And who knows, maybe I will do a little bit more about colour palettes, show you guys some of my examples with my pieces. And if you have any questions that I could also start to talk about in the next version of this video, then also let me know below. With all of that said, I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.